The Arizona plains in 1875 stretched like a vast, untamed wilderness of brittle grass and sun-bleached earth, a desolate expanse near sunlit valley where the dry wind kicked up dust clouds that stung the eyes and never ceased, its ceaseless murmur weaving tales of survival, loss, and resilience amid the prairie frontier. Sunlit Valley, a remote ranch perched on the edge of this harsh terrain, stood weathered under a dusty sky still clinging to the afternoon's heat, its wooden fences sagging under years of neglect, its barren yard whispering of a solitude long endured. Levi Hart rode slowly toward the corral, his horse breathing heavily beneath him, each hoofstep leaving a faint imprint in the cracked earth, the weight of a long day's labor pressing on his 43-year-old frame. His face, rugged with a weathered brow and a dusting of gray at his temples, was framed by a battered hat, his shoulders bowed under the grief of burying his sister 5 years past, beneath a lone juniper tree that leaned toward the dry creek, like a broken spirit. Since then, he had lived in silence, not by choice but necessity, the ranch bearing the shape of her memory. Her woven shawl still hung on a peg he never touched, a shelf of dried herbs gathering dust, the bedroll cold without her warmth. A nephew, lost to a raiders' raid, had stopped him from dreaming of family. Instead, he tended cattle, mended fences, and kept to himself. The town whispered of the quiet rancher who rarely spoke, some calling him hardened by loss, others saying he'd always been that way. He'd been out since dawn, repairing a broken windmill after a storm had ravaged the valley 2 nights prior, the thunderous skies having scattered his herd. His back ached with the effort, a persistent reminder of years in the saddle, and the solitude of the prairie had become a refuge from a world that had taken everything. As he approached the ranch's boundary, a faint sound broke the stillness, not the rustle of wind or the call of a hawk, but a desperate plea, a voice cutting through the dust. His head snapped up, scanning the horizon, squinting against the glare. Movement caught his eye, a figure staggering toward the corral, her form shadowed by the fading light, a child limp in her arms. Instinct surged through him, a rare break in his calm. Without thought, he spurred his horse forward, the animal's hooves pounding the earth as he dismounted with a grunt, his rifle in hand. The figure was a woman, an Apache warrior by her attire tattered buckskin dress, stained with dust and blood, her dark hair tangled with sagebrush, her face etched with exhaustion and fear. She carried a baby, no more than a year old, his small body, frail and silent, his lips cracked from dehydration. "Milk," she gasped, her voice breaking, her knees buckling as she fell to the ground, the child slipping slightly in her grasp. "Please, milk for him." Levi froze, his breath catching, the weight of her plea sinking into his chest like a stone. He said nothing, his jaw tightening, his hands steadying the rifle as he studied her. Her eyes, dark and pleading, held a mother's desperation, her wrists marked with faint rope burns, her posture defiant yet crumbling. The baby, Quay, whimpered faintly, his tiny hand clutching her dress, his pale face a mirror of starvation. Levi's mind raced. Why would a warrior beg so? Who had brought her to this? The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken pain, until he stepped forward, lowering his rifle. He took the baby gently, cradling him in one arm, then extended his other hand to the woman. She hesitated, her eyes searching his, then took it, her grip weak, but grateful. "Both of you," he said finally, his voice low and rough, breaking his usual silence. "I'll get milk." The woman blinked, a tear sliding down her cheek, and nodded faintly. He later learned her name was Tala, the baby's mother, both Apache, their presence a mystery he was yet to unravel. He led them to the ranch house, its door creaking as he pushed it open, the interior dim and dusty, the hearth cold and empty. Inside, he laid them on a cot, covering them with every blanket he owned, then rushed to the kitchen, retrieving a goatskin of milk he'd kept for emergencies. He warmed it over a small fire, his hands trembling, and returned to offer it to Tala. She took it with shaking hands, cradling Quay as she fed him, the baby's cries softening into quiet suckling. Kneeling by the hearth, he struck a match, his hand still unsteady, the flame catching slowly on the dry wood. Once it took, he stood and met their gazes. They watched him, silently, their eyes a mix of gratitude and wariness. "You're safe here," he said, his voice low and even. "I won't hurt you." Tala nodded faintly, and he pulled a chair to the far corner. "Sitting to guard them through the night." his jaw tight with the uncertainty of what he'd taken on. The storm outside raged, its thunder a backdrop to the quiet within. By dawn, the fire crackled steadily, its orange glow brushing the cot where Tala and Quay lay, their breathing steadied, color returning to their faces. Levi hadn't slept, remaining in the chair, his damp shirt and aching back a testament to the night's tension. Quay stirred, his small hand reaching for Tala, who held him close, her strength returning with each breath. Tala eased upright, her body aching from the ordeal, her eyes meeting his watchful, cautious, but not hostile. "You understand me?" he asked quietly. A pause, then a nod. "You hurt anywhere?" Another pause, and she touched her side, wincing, then gestured to Quay, who whimpered softly. Levi crouched beside them, rewrapping her side with a clean cloth, his hands gentle, her dignity unshaken despite her vulnerability. "Names?" he asked after a long moment. "Tala," she whispered, her accent hinting at Apache roots, nodding toward the baby. "Quay, my son." He tapped his chest. "Levi." They surveyed the ranch wooden walls, sparse furniture, the rifle near the door, their gazes lingering on it. "Safe here," he said, following their looks. "No one's coming." It was a hope, not a certainty, for a warrior and child like them, begging for survival, likely carrying a past that might follow. He stepped outside to tend his horse, needing space to process, the smoke rising steadily from the chimney a sign of life within. Inside, Tala eased upright, her body aching from the journey, the silence striking her as unfamiliar yet comforting. Levi's coat smelled of leather and sage, and she pulled it closer, studying the chair where he'd watched over them and Quay. When Levi returned with water and more milk, he found her sitting up, smoothing her dress, its torn shoulder still exposing her skin. He handed her the provisions, and she drank slowly, feeding Quay, her eyes steady. "Where's your family?" he asked carefully. Tala looked away, her jaw tensing, shaking her head firmly. "Tribe?" Another pause, then, "Number." Her voice was clear, her accent strong, and though he sensed withheld truth, he let it rest. For the rest of the day, they communicated in glances and gestures, him clearing space by the fire, her tending to Quay with quiet care. Levi repaired the windmill, his mind on the warrior's plea and the mystery of their arrival, while Tala kept the fire alive, claiming a role with silent purpose. That night, she stayed near the hearth until he climbed into bed, then joined him with Quay, lying close but not touching, their warmth and the child's soft breaths a new presence in his solitude. Neither spoke, but the silence had shifted, a bond forming in the wake of her plea, the weight of her sacrifice lingering like a shadow. The Arizona plains unfurled like a relentless expanse of brittle grass and fading shadows, as Levi Hart, Tala, Quay, and the Apache kin ventured away from sunlit valley, the pale dawn casting long, ghostly silhouettes across the prairie terrain. Levi led the way on foot, his weathered coat dusted with prairie dust, his boots crunching through the dry earth, his lasso coiled at his hip, his rifle slung across his back. His face, rugged with a weathered brow, bore a mixture of determination and unease, his brown eyes scanning the horizon for signs of the outlaws, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Tala walked beside him, her mended buckskin dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her wrists still marked from the ropes, her dark eyes sharp with survival. Quay, the 1-year-old boy, clung to Tala, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of recovery from the night's dehydration. A young Apache warrior, Kono, trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his hands carrying a spear, his presence a silent guardian, flanked by 3 others from Tala's tribe, their faces painted with earth tones, their horses laden with supplies glinting in the weak light. The journey to a hidden tribal camp near Red Canyon, a 2-day trek, was their goal. But the prairie held other trials to test their fragile alliance. Their water was scarce, the goatskin of milk they'd salvaged from Sunlit Valley reduced to a few tepid drops, their supplies dwindled to a strip of jerky and a handful of dried berries Kono had foraged. The heat bit deep, its intensity a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the rasp of their breathing, the soft coo of Quay, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Levi's mind churned with the previous night's events, his silent choice to provide milk for Tala's child, her desperate plea, the arrival of the Apache kin with their claim of sacred law, the threat of outlaws. He'd acted to ease his own guilt, but their presence now drew danger, a price he hadn't foreseen. He offered Tala water, a gesture of goodwill, his hand trembling slightly from the heat. Tala accepted, her eyes narrowing. "Why risk this for us?" she asked, her voice raw but steady. Levi met her gaze, his brow furrowing. "Lost my sister and nephew to raiders. Can't leave you to die like that." Tala's expression softened, but suspicion lingered, a reflection of a life shaped by hardship and survival. Kono and the warriors walked with a quiet dignity, their buckskin garments rustling softly, the woven pouch Tala carried catching the fading light. Kono shared their story as they moved, his voice low and resonant. "Outlaws raided our village, stole our goods, left her to starve with the child. Tala fled with Quay to survive. We've tracked them since, fearing their return," Tala added, her tone firm. "My tribe abandoned me. I ran to save my son." "A warrior," Nita muttered. "They want our tribal secrets." Levi's heart sank. The pouch likely held something valuable, a lure that had ruined men, but Tala's life and Quay's safety were worth more. "I'll keep you safe," he said, his resolve firming, though doubt gnawed at him about the pouch's contents. Their progress halted at midday when they reached a trading post tucked into a shallow gully. Prairie Rest, a haven for outlaws and wanderers. Levi needed supplies, his stores depleted after Tala and Quay's rescue, but Tala tensed. "Danger here," she warned. "Men talk." Levi nodded, his rifle ready. Inside, the air was stifling, the stench of sweat and stale tobacco thick. A trader named Gideon Holt, a wiry man with a sly grin, leaned against a crate, his eyes narrowing. "Levi Hart," he said, "heard you took in an Apache woman and her kid. Outlaws are offering a bounty." Levi's jaw tightened, his past with Prairie rumors flashing. "Mind your own, Gideon." Holt smirked, his gaze on the pouch. $200, says I tell them where you're headed." Tala's pouch flashed, striking Holt's arm, forcing him back. "Speak, and you bleed," she hissed. Levi stepped forward, his rifle aimed. "Walk away, Gideon. This ain't your fight." Holt paled, retreating, his laughter echoing. "They'll hunt you down." Levi cursed under his breath. Holt's treachery would lead the outlaws straight to Red Canyon. "We move now," he said. The tribe's respect grew, their trust a tentative thread. "You're brave," Nita said. Levi shook his head, the weight of his past pressing down. "I've been a loner." The ambush came at dusk. Hoofbeats thundered through the grass, and 4 outlaws led by a scar-faced rider named Brant surrounded them near a rocky outcrop. "Hand over the woman, Hart," Brant barked, his rifle raised. Levi fired, his shot grazing Brant's arm, sending him staggering. Tala threw a rock, striking another's shoulder, while Kono's spear felled a third. Levi's second shot dropped a rider, the outcrop falling silent save for the wind's moan. The 4th fled, shouting threats. "They'll burn you out." They took cover behind the rocks, bandaging minor cuts, the heat seeping into their exhaustion. Kono's eyes met Levi's, his suspicion easing. "You fight for us," he said. Levi wiped dust from his brow furrowing. "Ain't right. What they did. I've got regrets of my own." Tala nodded, her pain surfacing. "They killed my brother for this pouch." Levi's breath caught. The relic was the key, a prize worth killing for. "We'll keep it safe," he said, his resolve hardening. Their bond deepened as they rested, Levi sharing his canteen, Kono offering berries from his pouch. "What's in that pouch?" he asked. Tala held it up, its symbols glowing faintly. "It holds our sacred rites. They want them to erase our past." Levi's heart ached, his losses echoing hers. "I lost my sister and nephew to raiders, lived alone since." Nita's gaze softened. "We're all scarred then. Maybe we heal together." The night stretched ahead, the prairie vast, but the threat of the outlaws grew. Levi taught Tala to use his lasso, her hands steady despite her past, their partnership a lifeline. Kono showed him Apache prairie signs, their trust aflame against the prairie's grip. "You're strong," Levi said. Tala smiled, a rare light in her eyes. "You too, brother." The tribe watched, their kinship deepening, a family forged in the crucible of the prairie, but the peace was fleeting. Hoofbeats returned, Closer now Brant and his men, relentless as the heat. Levi chose a defensible ridge, setting up with the tribe behind rocks. "We fight if we must," he said, his rifle ready. Kono nodded, his spear poised. Brant's men appeared, their rifles glinting. "Last chance, Hart," Brant shouted. Levi fired, his shot dropping a rider, but an arrow grazed Kono's leg, drawing a cry. Tala shielded him, her pouch a talisman, while Nita's spear felled too, forcing the attackers to retreat. They bandaged Kono's leg, Levi's hands gentle. "You're all my family now," he said. Nita's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. "And you're ours." The prairie tested them, its dusty trials forging a bond. But the outlaws' wrath loomed larger, a storm they'd face together. Red Canyon was near, but so was their reckoning. The Arizona plains stretched like an unforgiving ocean of brittle grass and rolling dunes, their surface baking under the relentless glare of a midday sun that churned the air into a shimmering haze of dust and heat, the horizon wavering with mirages of desperation. Levi Hart, Tala, Quay, and the Apache kin led by Kono, pressed onward, the wagon creaking behind Levi's steady hands, the weary horse plodding through the dry earth with a labored gait, its breath a faint gasp in the stifling air. Levi's weathered coat clung to his broad frame with sweat, his boots sinking into the cracked soil, his lasso coiled at his hip, his rifle slung across his back. His face, rugged with a weathered brow, bore a determined set, his brown eyes scanning the horizon for signs of the outlaws, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Tala walked beside him, her mended buckskin dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her wrists still marked from the ropes, her small woven pouch with tribal secrets swaying at her side, her dark eyes sharp with survival. Quay, the 1-year-old boy, clung to Tala, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of recovery from the night's dehydration. Kono trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his hands carrying a spear, his presence a silent guardian, flanked by 3 Apache warriors, their faces painted with earth tones, their horses laden with supplies glinting in the weak light. The hidden tribal camp near Red Canyon, their destination, was a day's journey, but the prairie held other trials to forge their resilience. Their water was nearly gone, the goatskin they'd salvaged from Prairie Rest reduced to a few tepid drops. Their supplies dwindled to a strip of jerky and a handful of dried berries Kono had foraged. The heat beat down, its intensity a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the rasp of their breathing, the soft coo of Quay, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Levi's mind wrestled with his past, his sister and nephew lost to raiders, his years of isolation, a guilt that shadowed his every step. The presence of Tala and Quay, a mirror to his loneliness, stirred a compassion he'd buried, their resilience a challenge to his despair. "We need to find water soon," Levi said, his voice hoarse from the dry air. Kono nodded, pointing to a faint depression on the prairie floor. "There's a dry wash ahead. It might hold a spring," he replied, his Apache wisdom guiding them through the wilderness. The tribe's silence, broken only by soft murmurs and the occasional rustle of supplies, hinted at their vigilance. The pouch Tala carried a burden they shared. They reached the dry wash as the sun peaked, its cracked earth a fleeting mercy against the scorching heat. Levi checked the wagon, its wheels wobbling from the rough terrain, while Tala and a warrior named Nita scouted for signs of life, her movements aided by a makeshift crutch. The wash offered a shallow pool, its water brackish but drinkable, a rare oasis in the prairie's grip. Levi filled the canteen, offering it to Nita first, his hands trembling from the heat. "Drink, friend," he said, the word warm with care. Nita accepted, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Levi," she murmured, a rare nod breaking through her stoic demeanor. The moment was brief, but it deepened their bond, a thread of trust weaving through their shared struggle. The prairie's ordeal struck at noon. A dust storm brewed on the horizon, a roiling wall of red dust that swallowed the sky, its roar a test of their endurance. "Get down," Levi shouted, pulling Tala, Quay, and the wagon behind a dune, the warriors and horse crowding in. The storm hit like a living entity, its force tearing at their clothes, dust clogging their throats and stinging their eyes. Levi shielded Quay with his body, Tala and Nia huddling close, the tempest raging for hours, leaving them buried in drifts, their water spilled into the sand. As it passed, The prairie revealed a new peril, an outlaw trap, a snare concealed by dust, its metal jaws glinting near Tala's crutch. Levi reacted instantly, yanking her back, the trap snapping shut inches from her. Kono's quick thinking with his spear dislodged the mechanism, saving them. Good save, Levi said, his respect for them growing. Tala nodded, her gaze steady. The prairie tests our soul, she replied. That night they camped in the wash's lee, a small fire their only warmth, its glow casting shadows on the sandy walls. The storm had delayed them, the camp still a day away, and Levi's mind churned with guilt, his family's loss, his years of isolation. Now this family's fight. Kono offered him a berry, his hands gentle. You fight for us, he said. Why? Levi poked the fire, his face shadowed. I turned away from help once my sister and nephew paid for it. Can't do that again. Quay's eyes, though weak, softened, his small voice whispering, Papa, a word that pierced Levi's heart. The confession hung heavy, a mirror to Levi's regrets. Strength ain't just in surviving, he said. It's in standing together. Tala leaned against him, her voice small. This pouch holds our rights. They want them to erase our history. Levi's heart ached, his losses echoing hers. I lost my family to raiders, lived alone since. Nita's gaze met his, a warmth breaking through. We're all lost then. Maybe we find kin. Their talk was interrupted by a rustle. Apache figures emerged from the dusk, led by a stout woman with a painted face. I am Mara, Kono's sister, she said, her voice cautious. We saw the storm. Outlaws hunt you. She offered a water skin, her eyes on Tala and Quay. You're alive, sister. We thought you lost. Tala ran to her, tears in her eyes. Levi saved us. Mara nodded, offering Levi a feathered cord. You're kin now, rancher. The reunion was brief but heartfelt. Mara's warriors, 15 strong, joined them, their spears glinting. The tracker Brant is near, Mara warned. He plans an attack at dawn. Levi's heart steadied, his bond with the tribe a shield. We'll be ready, he said. Quay's hand found his trust a beacon. Father, he murmured. The word warmed Levi, a redemption he hadn't sought. The peace shattered as the first light crept over the horizon. Hoofbeats echoed Brant and 12 riders, their rifles ready, their intent clear in the pre-dawn gloom. Mara's men melted into the sand dunes, leaving Levi and the tribe exposed on the ridge. Hold, Mara whispered, but Levi stood firm, his rifle raised, the weight of the warning settling in. Brant's voice cut through the heat. Give up the woman heart, or die, Levi fired, his shot grazing a rider, but an arrow struck Mara's arm, drawing a cry. Tala shielded her, her pouch a talisman, while Kono's spear felled too, forcing Brant to retreat momentarily. They bandaged Mara's arm, Levi's hands gentle. You're all my family now, he said. Mara's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. And you're ours. The prairie tested them, its dusty trials forging a bond. But the outlaws' attack loomed larger, a storm they'd face together. Red Canyon was near, but so was their reckoning. Red Canyon rose like a rugged scar across the Arizona plains, its treacherous pass of cracked earth and weathered cliffs standing defiant against the encroaching dusk. The sun dipped low, casting a fiery glow across the canyon's rim, the air thick with the scent of sun-scorched grass and the faint promise of a cooling night breeze following the day's relentless heat. Levi Hart, Tala, Quay, and the Apache kin led by Kono prepared for their stand, the tension palpable in the stillness, heightened by the looming threat of the outlaws' attack. Levi's weathered coat was torn at the sleeve, his boots caked with dust and blood from his grazed shoulder, his lasso and rifle poised despite the ache in his muscles. His face, rugged with a weathered brow, bore a grim determination, his brown eyes shadowed by the weight of his past solitude. Tala stood beside him, her mended buckskin dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her side wound bandaged, her small woven pouch with tribal secrets clutched tightly, her dark eyes resolute with survival. Quay, the 1-year-old boy, clung to Tala, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of courage. Kono trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his leg wound bandaged, his hands wielding a spear, his presence a steady guardian, flanked by 3 Apache warriors, their faces painted with earth tones, their weapons and horses poised for battle. The journey to this refuge had forged their bond, now tested by the outlaws' relentless pursuit. The canyon offered strategic ground, steep drops for ambushes, rocky outcrops for cover, and a narrow pass for traps. Levi fortified a vantage point with Kono's men, his hands calloused from years of ranching, now skilled in war. Tala rigged tripwires with sinew, her movements precise despite her exhaustion, her pouch a constant reminder of their burden. The warriors assisted, stacking stones with Nita, their vigilance unwavering. "The outlaws want the pouch," Kono said, his voice low and strained. "They'll kill us for it." Levi nodded, his guilt over past isolation fueling his resolve. "We hold them here," he replied. Nita handed him a sharpened stake, a silent pledge of unity, the weapon's weight, a comfort in his hands. Mara distributed spears and arrows, her warriors blending into the canyon's shadows, their movements silent and deadly. "Brant leads them," she warned. "The attack is imminent." Levi's heart steadied, his bond with the tribe a shield against the encroaching dark. "We fight as family," he said. Quay's small hand found his, a flicker of trust breaking through his fear. "Father," he murmured, a word that warmed Levi's soul. The sentiment lingered, a redemption he hadn't dared hope for, as the wind carried the distant sound of approaching hooves, the conflict now a reality. As dusk deepened, the air grew taut with anticipation, the canyon's silence broken by the crunch of boots on gravel. The outlaws rode in with 15 men, Brant at their side, the tracker's scar-faced grin a harbinger of violence. Their leader, a broad man in a black duster lined with stolen pelts, dismounted and called out, his voice a thunderclap against the cliffs. "Hart, hand over the woman and that pouch, or this canyon becomes your tomb." Levi stepped forward, his rifle raised, his voice firm despite the heat. "You'll have to take them over my dead body," he shouted, his breath visible in the cooling air. The clash erupted like a prairie storm. The outlaws charged, their rifles and revolvers spitting fire through the dusk. Levi's first shot dropped a rider, the bullet finding its mark with a precision honed by survival. Kono's warriors struck from the shadows, their spears felling 2 more, their movements silent and deadly. Tala triggered a tripwire, a dynamite cache salvaged from an old trader's stash exploding and sending a shower of dust and rock, scattering the attackers. But the outlaws' numbers were overwhelming, and Brant's rifle was a relentless predator, his bullet grazing Levi's arm, drawing a sharp hiss of pain. Mara pulled him behind a rock, her arm wound seeping anew. "Stay alive," she growled, loosing an arrow that struck a man's chest, her aim unwavering despite her fatigue. The canyon became a battlefield, its echoes ringing with gunfire and the thud of falling bodies. Levi fired again, dropping another rider, the heat numbing his hands but not his resolve. Kono's warriors fought with primal fury, their spears piercing the fray, while Nita and the warriors lobbed rocks, their forms a surprising force against the rugged terrain. But the outlaw leader's voice cut through the chaos. "Tala, give me the pouch's secret, or they all die." He held a pistol to Kono's head, the warrior's spear shattered, his eyes defiant. Tala's heart sank, her pouch clutched tight. "No," she cried, her voice raw with emotion. Levi's mind raced, he couldn't lose another family. He signaled Kono's men to hold, his gaze locking with Tala's. Silent plea for a plan. Tala stepped forward, her stance defiant despite her wounds. "They betrayed my tribe," she shouted, her voice carrying over the wind. "They killed my family, left me to starve with Quay." The revelation hit Levi like a thunderclap. The outlaw's greed wasn't just for the pouch, but to silence Tala, who knew of her family's demise, a dark secret her tribe had suffered. The leader laughed, his pistol steady. "Then you all die with your defiance." But Tala moved, shoving Levi, Quay, and Rose aside as Brant fired, the bullet tearing through her chest. She fell, blood staining the dust, her pouch slipping from her grasp. "Levi, no," he roared, lunging to Tala's side, his hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. Kono's warriors charged, their spears a blur, felling 3 men in a surge of vengeance. Nita struck with a rock, stunning a rider, while Mara's arrow found another's leg. Levi tackled Brant, their struggle a tangle of fists and sand, until his lasso coiled around the tracker's neck, ending the threat. The outlaw leader roared, charging with his pistol, but Kono's spear pierced his side, bringing him down. The remaining outlaws fled, their horses vanishing into the dusk. Levi knelt beside Tala, his hands stained with her blood, his heart breaking as he tried to stem the flow. "Hold on," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. Her eyes met his, a faint smile breaking through the pain. "You're my brother now," she rasped. "Protect him. The pouch is our future." Her hand fell, her spirit slipping into the prairie's embrace, her sacrifice a final act of trust. Mara bound the leader, her men finishing the fight, the canyon falling silent save for the wind's mournful wail. The outlaws were defeated, their men scattered, but Tala's loss was a wound deeper than the heat. Levi cradled her, tears mixing with the dust on his face, the weight of her words sinking in. Quay, Kono, and the warriors approached, placing the pouch, a woven mat, and herbs on her chest. "She was my mother," Quay said, his small voice thick. "Now she's with our ancestors." The Apache carried her to a pyre, their chants rising, a tribute to her courage that echoed through the canyon. Levi stood, his guilt eased by her forgiveness, his promise to protect Quay and the others a new purpose. The canyon smoldered, the air heavy with loss and victory. Mara offered Levi a place with the tribe, and he nodded. "I'll honor her at the camp," he said, his voice steady. The journey to Red Canyon had broken the outlaw's grip, but Tala's sacrifice would resonate in the prairie's silence. Levi's redemption was hers, and the pouch, her people's future, would remain guarded. The dawn broke over Red Canyon, a fragile light spilling across the windswept plains, where the embers of Tala's pyre glowed like the last whispers of a fading hope. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke and the dry, earthy aroma of the prairie, the vast Arizona landscape reclaiming the battlefield with a quiet, unyielding peace. Levi Hart stood at the canyon's edge, his weathered coat torn and dusted with ash, his boots planted firmly in the cracked earth, his lasso and rifle resting against a boulder. His face, rugged with a weathered brow, bore the weight of grief, his brown eyes glistening with unshed tears, the guilt of his past solitude softened by Tala's final words. The woven pouch with the tribal secrets, Tala's strange reward, hung around his neck on a cord, a symbol of the kinship that had brought him to this moment. The outlaw leader, bound and defeated, slumped against a rock, his claim to power shattered, his greed no match for the courage of a rancher and his adopted tribe. Quay, the 1-year-old boy, clung to Levi's leg, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face reflecting a mix of sorrow and newfound strength. Kono, Mara, Nita, and the Apache warriors gathered nearby, their painted faces mirroring the resilience of the prairie. The Apache warriors, led by Kono, moved with a solemn reverence, their faces reflecting the canyon's rugged hues as they gathered around Tala's pyre. The flames had dwindled to a gentle glow, the earth around it darkened by melted wax and ash, a testament to her sacrifice. Kono knelt, offering a prayer in Apache, his voice a deep chant that reverberated through the plains, honoring a mother who had transcended her role as protector and sister. Levi watched, his hands trembling as he placed Tala's shawl, once her shield, onto the pyre, a silent vow to carry her legacy forward. Quay, Mara, and the warriors joined him, adding the pouch, a woven mat, and a bundle of herbs, their offerings a tribute to her courage. "She saved us," Quay said, his small voice thick with emotion. "You kept her promise." Levi nodded, the words a balm to his wounded soul, a redemption he hadn't dared to claim. The journey to the hidden tribal valley began, the warriors carrying the pyre's remnants through the canyon's dusty trail, its ashes a sacred burden. The path was treacherous, the ground shifting underfoot, the heat of the day giving way to a cooling breeze that carried the promise of renewal. Levi walked with them, his arm aching from the graze but his spirit lifted by their unity. The valley emerged a sheltered expanse nestled between rolling hills, its floor dotted with wildflowers and a faint shimmer of a spring fed by an underground stream. The Apache survivors greeted them, their faces etched with grief for Tala but warmth for her savior. Mara led Levi to the spring, its waters clear and life-giving, reflecting the cavern walls adorned with painted symbols and woven mats, a sanctuary Tala had died to protect. "Her spirit guards this place," Mara said. "You are kin." The tribe gathered around a fire that night, the valley's walls amplifying their voices as they shared tales of Tala's bravery, her gifts to Levi, her trust. The pouch were now symbols of her legacy, their weight heavier than the sacred rites they held. They offered him a place among them, their eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. "You fought for her," Nita said, handing him a woven mat. "Stay and find peace." Levi hesitated, his mind drifting to his past, a rancher broken by Raiders' loss, his sister and nephew's deaths, a guilt he'd carried like a stone. Tala's words, "You're my brother," echoed, her sacrifice a key to unlock that prison. "I'll stay," he said finally, "but I'll bring my skills to your valley. With your help." The days that followed were a blend of mourning and rebuilding. The Apache taught Levi their ways, how to channel the spring's water for crops, how to weave mats from prairie grasses, how to honor their rights with herbs by the fire. Quay became his shadow, the boy's small hands learning alongside Levi's, teaming to vary, his laughter a rare sound that softened the edges of his grief. Ayla, guided by Kono, took to organizing the valley's resources, her resilience turning into leadership. They constructed a small adobe home near the spring, its walls rising under their hands, a fusion of Apache strength and Levi's ranching skills. The prairie, once a place of solitude, became a bridge between worlds, its silence broken by the tribe's songs and the trickle of water, a stark contrast to the hollow quiet he'd known. One evening, as the sun set, painting the valley in shades of orange and purple, Levi stood at the spring's edge, the woven pouch, a constant reminder. Quay and the tribal children joined him, holding a new pouch and a carved lasso crafted by the tribe. "For us?" Quay asked. Levi nodded, his eyes misting as he handed them out. "Your mother would want you to have them," he said. Quay smiled, a rare light in his young face. "She gave us a home." The sentiment lingered, a bond forged in the crucible of the prairie, strengthened by the promise of a maternal legacy. The tribe celebrated with a feast, their songs filling the valley, Tala's name woven into the melodies. Levi learned her story in full, how she'd fled her tribe's abandonment to protect Quay, how she'd hidden the pouch to preserve the truth of her family's demise, how her spirit now watched over them. His past, his failure to save his family, his years of isolation faded against her forgiveness. He wasn't just a rancher anymore, but a guardian, a father to the child she'd entrusted to him. Mara approached, offering a carved wooden flute. "Lead with her strength," she said. Levi took it, his hands steady. "I will." Weeks later, the valley thrived, its spring nourishing new crops, its people strengthened by Levi's aid. The tribe, true to their bond, began the journey back to Sunlit Valley, bringing materials and hands to rebuild Levi's ranch, transforming the ruins into a symbol of renewal. He rebuilt his life, the tribe's help a lifeline, their stories a balm to his loneliness. Tala's shawl hung above the new home's door, a shrine to her sacrifice. Its fabric a silent witness. The prairie stretched vast, its sun-scorched plains a testament to their fight, but it was no longer a place of solitude. Levi's redemption was complete, not in land, but in the family he'd found: Quay, Kono, Mara, Nita, the tribe all bound by Tala's legacy. As the sun rose over Red Canyon, its golden light bathed the valley and the distant silhouette of the reborn ranch, a promise of a new beginning. Levi stood at the home's threshold, the wooden flute at his side, the woven pouch gleaming. He was no longer just a silent rancher who'd answered a plea, but a father to a boy whose mother's courage had saved him, whose pouch had turned desperation into a legacy of hope. The prairie whispered her name, and Levi carried it forward, a maternal legacy born from the ashes of sacrifice, with the promise of a rebuilt home anchoring their new family.